Imagine this. You're sitting down with friends or family at a cozy restaurant. The place has a good reputation. People have been raving about the food for years, so you order yourself a nice, big, homemade burger to fill up on. The staff seem relaxed. A lot of effort has been put into making the decor feel inviting, and it all seems high quality. After a time, the wait staff eventually roll out with various platters you ordered. They're very eager, doing a big song and dance as they finally deliver the food to your table with a grin. Lifting the lid, however, instead of the burger you ordered, it's a bit of squished, moldy bread with some butter on top. That wouldn't be acceptable, would it? So why do you do it with video games? At the restaurant's insistence, they inform you that you did, in fact, get the burger you ordered, and that cooking is really hard, guys, so you should just give them all a break. Eventually, as a compromise, they say that you should just come back in 6 to 12 months, and they'll steadily add the lettuce, patty, tomato, and other toppings that were promised, but only if they feel like it. That wouldn't be acceptable, would it? So why do you do it with video games? Imagine that you've just had a kidney transplant. It's been a long, painful wait while on dialysis, but the surgeon is confident that it should take. The surgery went well, and you have nothing to worry about. When you actually get home, however, you start to feel nauseous, and there's pain around the surgery site. It steadily gets worse the more you try to push through it, so eventually you're back at the hospital, and it turns out you're suffering complications, which include internal bleeding. The surgeon butchered the job, and it's clear they had no idea what they were doing in the first place. They're just going to leave it in there because it's not their problem anymore, but maybe if you pay up, they can be bothered. That wouldn't be acceptable, would it? So why do you do it with video games? Imagine you're sitting in a movie theater, enjoying the latest blockbuster that everyone's been raving about. Suddenly, the power cuts out, and the projectionist informs you that the session is cancelled and no, they won't be offering refunds. Everyone around you is somehow still happy though, and saying that they should be thankful they saw as much as they did. That wouldn't be acceptable, would it? So why do you do it with video games? I could keep going, but I think you see my point. One of the greatest tricks ever pulled was consumers convincing themselves that they should be grateful for getting less than what was promised. Corporate gaslighting is a much deeper, corrupt issue than this video can really touch on here, but point being, I can't believe how stupid all the hardcore gamers out there have collectively become and how short people's memories are. I mean, you've already read the title, so it should be pretty obvious what this video is going to be about, but point being, there is no redemption. There is no grand return, no great beast that a billion-dollar cold and uncaring company slays to fix their fuck-ups. It's just bullshit. So let's take a look at some examples. I've made no secret of the fact I fucking despise this game. But nothing, because I couldn't care less that Phantom Liberty was released years after the fact. Still, that didn't stop people glazing CD Projekt just like they did with The Witcher 3 because they did the bare minimum of fixing the most overhyped and broken game ever. Much like Fallout 4, I could, theoretically, spend a whole video just unpacking how much I loathe this game, and that, while the character writing is fine enough in some places, the game is fundamentally broken and rotten to its core. Just like Fallout 4 though, I have better things to do with my life and spend it on talking about things I hate, so let's try and keep this to a minimum. To describe Phantom Liberty and the 2.0 or 3.0 or whatever update they're at now compared to the base game, let's use the analogy of putting a band-aid on the Titanic. It's nice they tried, but the ship's already well and truly gone down, Chief. Like, am I the only one who remembers what a fucking train wreck this game was at release? I was even being charitable to it at the time. RPGs are buggy, especially if they're open world, and that's more likely the more ambitious they are. But 2077 was a whole other story. I was willing to give it the benefit of the doubt. I had some bugs, but it was otherwise decent enough when I played it at the end of 2020. That good faith began to fade, however, the more and more came out from behind the scenes. If we had to place any responsibility on what happened with this game, it'd be the idiot who made that initial promise to investors of April 2020. It's obvious why they did this. CD Projekt wanted to do the same thing Rockstar does and double dip at the end of the console generation, but man, With how bad and unfinished 2077 was in December, just imagine what it was like before the crunch had it released in April. Entire game mechanics, sections of the skill tree, AI, basic functionality, so much was broken, buggy, or just undercooked. It's amazing to me that people have conveniently decided to ignore all that just because they got a shiny new toy in Phantom Liberty. And it just goes to show how stupid the average consumer is, because CD Projekt did the exact same thing all over again. Idris Elba instead of Keanu Reeves, and wow, this random celebrity means the game must be good. Jesus. If there was ever a single example that encapsulates why the industry is the way it is today, it would be Cyberpunk 2077. Player numbers then peaked after the Edge Runners anime, which had nothing to do with the game. Like, am I the crazy one here? Is some anime waifus and the CEO saying sorry really all it takes and then all is forgiven? Do you really have that little self-respect to bend over for a company that uses and discards people without a second thought?
So go ahead and play. Just don't forget, the game is fixed. The game is fixed. The game is fixed.
When I saw that for the first time, and to think they actually had the audacity to say that, it actually made me angry. The fact literally anyone fell for this, let alone the amount of people who say 2077 is redeemed nowadays, is such a joke. Cyberpunk 2077 is not redeemed. It took years to just fix and knock it into something that even remotely resembled the state it should have been in at launch. But you could be forgiven for thinking otherwise with the amount of people salivating over 8K skin textures and all these cinematic gameplay videos. How ironic that cyberpunk fiction so often reinforces corporate dystopia and the mindlessness of consumerism. Now, too often in these discussions, it's all too easy to fall into the trap of indie good, AAA bad, but Hello Games and what happened with the quite literally biggest empty box bait and switch in gaming is an ongoing reminder of overpromising and what post-launch support can buy a team. The narrative around No Man's Sky, Sean Murray, and the small team that promised an entire universe that was ultimately revealed to be barren proc-gen slop would surely be secondary only to Cyberpunk in this mistaken belief of redemption. Is it nice that Hello Games didn't just cut their losses and run? Did they do the bare minimum compared to various Kickstarter scams over the years and actually stick to their plan, knuckle down and keep working on it? Sure, but are people's expectations really that low that we're celebrating developers that do the bare minimum now? I picked up No Man's Sky on GOG back around late 2019, maybe early 2020, and it was fine. I don't usually play survival games because they suffer from that empty box, half-baked idea where you're just expected to make your own fun, but NMS was fine as something to throw on while I was listening to podcasts or music, that kind of thing. Thing is, for all the content updates the team added over the years, the new ships, overhauling multiplayer, mission types, art assets, whatever, there isn't a better example of a game that sums up the phrase biting off more than you can chew than No Man's Sky. These updates are, in the context of a billion, gazillion, whatever planet universe, essentially a drop in the ocean. Now, if you're one of the people that doesn't mind the fact you're exploring a red-flavored planet in the same way you're exploring the Ashen Grey planet, or the Snow planet, or the hideous proc-gen insectoid planet that has the exact same resources as every other planet you've seen, then by all means, go for it. Like I said, No Man's Sky isn't the worst thing in the world by any means, and I recognise the fact Hello Games brought back a lot of good faith for sticking to their guns and continuing to freely update the game, but these are tiny contributions that are like a drop in the ocean for making exploration, quests, combat, and so forth in a proc-gen universe meaningful and engaging. No Man's Sky is the absolute endpoint of that kind of open-world survival craft design. If I can go anywhere anywhere and do anything, except it's the exact same as anywhere else in the universe besides pretty visuals, then what's the point? It's funny that Starfield apparently took this and somehow made it even worse, but the feel of No Man's Sky once the illusion wears off is like treading molasses. Ultimately, you're going nowhere fast, and all the updates in the world won't begin to change that fact, or fill an entire universe. You might be thinking that I've been unfair or deliberately selective. I've said before there are heaps of buggy games that I love to this day, ones that aren't even particularly redeemed, or fixed for that matter, but I can see past that and admire them for what they are. To give you an example, I dropped Rogue Trader back at release because it was, by far, the most broken Alcat game with combat not working, and it felt so goddamn slow to play, and I only picked it up again where things finally clicked earlier this year. To come back to the title of the video though, I don't think games I subjectively like are somehow elevated or whatever above the same ones I've been criticizing. As much as I might love it, KOTOR 2 and New Vegas are still to this day in a very poor state if you try them out of the box and require mods to get up and running properly. For the sake of consistency, I can't forgive or excuse these games any more than I did 2077 because in most cases, the fact they're even being talked about today had nothing to do with the developers. They were saved by the community. Case in point, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines and the Unofficial patch. VTMB was lightning in a bottle. Troika was a short-lived experiment by Jason Anderson, Leonard Boyarsky, and Tim Kaine after they'd left Interplay and the proverbial sinking ship, but for as much as I love VTM, as much as I love Bloodlines, the characters, the personality, Bloodlines is a broken game, and it was neither fixed nor redeemed. The cult classic status that steadily built up over the years was almost entirely thanks to West 5 and all contributors to the Unofficial patch. Much like the Sith Lord's restored content mod, it was the community that saved these games and allowed their better parts to shine through once players could see past the jank or rough spots. For all the effort fans have put into these games though, they can't overhaul what ultimately isn't there. Good endings for one. I love VTMB, but it's honestly worth stopping around Chinatown because the quality takes a huge nosedive from there. It's a long, painful slog up until the end credits, and balancing goes out the window. No more skill checks, it becomes almost entirely about combat in a game where that was the weakest link, to put it lightly. Similarly, the restored content mod for KOTOR 2 could only do so much when Malachor 5 rushes through what happens with companions, and there simply isn't any dialogue left for them to say. VTMB is, in many ways, a fantastic game and well deserving of its reputation for how the game is bursting with personality, charm, and how it captures the potential of the World of Darkness setting, but it was never fixed, and given how bad the final third or quarter of the game is, I don't think it will ever be redeemed either. If you buy a product, you're well within your rights to expect that product to be, firstly, what you actually paid for, and that it meets quality standards. Because game distribution shifted to being almost entirely digital around a decade ago, a laziness has crept into how developers support and market their games. All that bullshit around live service compounded this even further, that it was intentionally broken, and just maybe, one day, you might actually get what you paid for. It's not to say that bad, broken games weren't released before this time. Big Rigs is an infamous example, same with Superman 64, and tons of shovelware that people always forget when they talk about the good old days. It's also perfectly fine for developers to admit they screwed up, that they want to do better, and that they're going to stick by and do the best they can with patches. Point is, if you want the industry to be better, you should first expect better. I keep coming back to this over and over and over again, but the most important metric from the lowest paid developer to executives in a boardroom to an investor with their feet up in the Cayman Islands is the profit margin. The sunk cost fallacy may have worked out in the long run for a game like Cyberpunk 2077, but that is not tenable. Nor should it be. You should never blindly consume anything, especially when it's just broken, uninspired, undercooked crap.